here for a very long time, but we're going to make the best of the time. So if you're here tonight, super great to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you've had a great day this midweek. It's Thursday already, actually. It's slightly past midweek, but great to have you join us. And Dan and I were just chatting just now about facilitation techniques and how uh, visualization is such a brilliant tool. But I think for today's subject matter, we want to go into how do you amplify your team's value and impact through strategic facilitation. So if you're here this evening, you're probably part of a team, or you've had the opportunity to lead a team or join a team or be involved. And the question is, how do you make your voice count and sort of driving that team towards, greater outcomes, regardless of where you sit. You might be reporting to people above you, but you might also have some oversight over people. So Dan and I will chat briefly to that this evening. But Dan, do you want to do a real quick introduction of yourself and what you do as we go into this conversation?
Sure. So my name's Dan Gilbert. I'm based in the United States, but I work with organizations around the world on innovation, creativity, and leadership. And I'm thrilled to be here. I've collaborated with Demi on multiple projects over the years around strategy and innovation and leadership, and I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely great to have you. And if you're in this room, please do make sure that you put your name and where you are in the chat. Grace Kavai, is great to have you from Mombasa. Brilliant having you. And I'll talk about, we're coming to your country in a few days. Shegun, great to have you from Nigeria. Always great to see you and great to have you. And my name is Demi. I am primarily based in the United Kingdom, working in corporate learning and development, but also lending my facilitation skills to various projects in learning, in strategy, and in entrepreneurship development globally as well. And this evening, Dan and I are coming together, and like Dan said, we've worked together on different things. And this evening is not an exception to bring value to you. And so, if you could keep putting your name and where you're joining in the chat box, it would be great to see that. So what we'll do in a bit in the next few minutes is I'll give you a preview of our Global Facilitator Impact Summit, which will be coming up in Mombasa. So sorry, in Nairobi. Now I'm saying Mombasa because of Grace who's here. But we'll tell you about the why of strategic facilitation. We'll talk about the what, and then we'll talk about the how. And then I'll dive into the Global Facilitator Impact Summit a bit more. I'll let you ask a few questions. If you already, I'm just going to give you a quick preview. And our Global Facilitator Impact Summit is holding on the 11th of November. This will be in Nairobi. Dan and I will be there, as well as Syria, who I just saw there, another amazing L&D, experienced L&D professional. Was good to have you here, Syria. And we're going to have Dorcas as well, who is an amazing HR professional. And of course, we would have Maureen bringing in a digital perspective to this conversation. Stella, it's good to see you in Nairobi, Kenya as well. So we'll be in that city. And the Global Facilitator Impact Summit, this is the second edition, and first one was a really rich experience. Lots of great feedback till today for those sessions, but this is going to be even more powerful because it's in person and it's really focused on how do you drive business value for stakeholders, for clients, for your organization through learning and performance facilitation. So you're going to have all the speakers share their perspectives, give you tangible, practical tools to use when you go back to your organization. And there's going to be a number of other freebies and all that. So you'll get the facilitator book and a number of other things. So I'll tell you more about this before we jump off the call. And you can register for the early bird before 7th of November. That said, Dan and I want to jump into this conversation and really begin to explore this. So just to give Dan, because I feel like we always need to ground this conversation in some sort of context or definition. We're talking two big words, and what we're talking about is facilitation, and we're talking about teams. What's the interaction for you? What's facilitation, and where is that relevant where it comes to teams that people work with?
Let me.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Linda. Sorry, Demi, did you want to start with me? Or did you want to open that to everyone?
I wanted you done, and then
Sure.
people can put in the chat or maybe raise a hand if they wanted to share more. But we'll just go with the flow of the
Sure.
scripture.
So, to work that, to me, facilitation is the process, right? That's the process of getting the very best out of the people, the teams. So I see this as process and people. Now, it can be short-term or long-term facilitation. It can be intense or light. But really, this is facilitation as a process of getting the very best out of the people. Teams, I think about, are groups of people that can do something that none of us can do alone. It can be two people if we're, moving furniture, or it can be a million people if we're trying to make a political movement. A team is something that it comes together to do something that none of us can do alone. So that's how I think about those two. But I'm curious about how you or others think about those words.
Yeah, happy to hear in the chat what people are thinking as well. And please feel free to put that in the chat box. And if you've got any, if you want to raise your hand, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you. But I think it's powerful what you say. It's about the process, it's about the people and about the outcomes. And, someone has asked this question before to say, what's the difference between training and facilitation? And I think while training is an impartation of knowledge, to people, facilitation is sort of charting that experience for them. It's allowing them to be fully who they are in terms of getting what they need to get out of it, but also contributing to it, and really managing that entire process. And so it's helpful to understand. And to your point about teams, and one of the reasons why for me this is also important is that I can think about people who are sitting here today and might be in different kinds of teams. So people might be in a corporate team, or as a consultant, you might get into do work with an organization and that becomes your team for the day, or becomes your team for the week, or your team for the month. And so teams are always shifting and changing. And it's always that group of people where you've got a shared purpose and and you're trying to drive towards shared value. So really, when we bring those two things together, you are talking about this process that leads to an outcome, and you're talking about the people that you are engaging with around the shared value or sort of shared outcomes. Like we said, it could be people that you work together in an office in the same department. It could be people where you're facilitating learning for the day. It could be a client that you're taking through a strategy reset or retreat or conversation. So that's brilliant. I'm just talking about strategic facilitation, I guess the first thing is to really talk about why, Simon Sinek said, start with why. And then if we could get into why are we talking about strategic facilitation and why is this important? Let's talk about this a bit.
Sure. The why, I think it is important to start with the why. So I appreciate you putting that first. Really, the why is, we work in organizations or we work with other people. We don't want their mediocre or their fair work, and we also don't want them to just do what we say. That's not a team. If you're just asking somebody to do what you say, that's not getting the best out of what a team can be. We are thinking about strategic facilitation as really, what does it take to get the very best thinking out of everyone who's a part of this together, so that we can combine that best thinking. The tagline that I use when I work with clients is that none of us is as smart as all of us. And I truly believe that. But it takes work in order to do that. It doesn't just happen. So that's the first part. I think the second one to add, why is all of us come to every decision, every meeting, every interaction with a set of biases and assumptions. So some of them may be appropriate, some of them may be right, many of them are probably wrong, but we have them. And so strategic facilitation is a way to really be intentional and thoughtful and recognize where our shortcomings are, where our blind spots are, and how to work with others to get through them. Third point, just very practical, strategic facilitation helps us reduce errors and get the results we're looking for faster. So just very hands-on, practical and specific, make fewer mistakes and get going faster. And
I
then
like
fourth,
that,
well,
and
yeah,
maybe just before you jump to the fourth point, I think the first and the second point, there's something interesting and powerful there, because you see, as a facilitator, it's that point of understanding that you don't hold all the answers, but you come into a conversation as somebody who you've got your bias and your position, and you've got to be super conscious of that. But also, you've got to be able to go beyond that, then to get the very best thinking out of people. While the facilitation might stand in front of the room, their goal is not to tell the room what to do, but it's to get the best out of. And again, just going back to that difference between trainers and facilitators, or putting on a trainer hat versus a facilitator hat,
I,
it's critical.
I think that's really important. A trainer, a great trainer, can help people do what we're telling them to do, and do it the right way that your organization needs. That's a high level of great training. Um, a great facilitator helps people think of themselves as agent of change and some ownership over the process. So that's how I think about it. And
I
there's some
love it.
things that we all need training on. Like I want training on how to use Zoom better, for sure. I want training on how to use ChatGPT better. But I want facilitation and facilitated meetings when I'm trying to think about what really are the next steps for my business in the next 6 months to 2 years. I can use other people's. I don't have all the answers for that. We need to think about that. So
No, that's good. And I like the fact that, you see where this more complex problems lend itself to sort of a facilitated approach, and there is even this term facilitative leadership. And you've probably heard that as well, where you are, showing up, not necessarily, especially in organizations that seek to harness, the best of everybody in the team. And that's the style of leadership, like you're engaging people, you're getting the ownership, you're getting the best ideas from people, and then you're empowering people. So it's
yeah,
really, and I think that's why we really have to think about it in the strategy sort of lens. Let's talk a bit about sort of reducing errors. So we're talking about reducing errors where and getting to results faster. So maybe a bit of context. So within an organization, you could have meetings, maybe project meetings or team meetings, or you could have, even brainstorming sessions or strategy sessions. What's the value of this in, reducing errors?
well, I think of course, it depends on the organization and what your goals are. But the clients that I work with, they tend to uh, so sometimes they hire us after they've made a mistake, and they realize that they're not all on the same page working the same thing. So the errors are that people are pulling in different directions, whether from their different parts of their team, and not even like in the same direction. They don't even have to necessarily be exactly together, right? We want to try and just at least going the same direction and not uh, uh, perpendicular to one another. Um, so being thoughtful about so that's a way to like making people feel. The how for that one is making people feel comfortable to ask questions early in the process, and not to just say there's no bad questions, but to actually model it, to be vulnerable when you're the leader, to share your own questions that you don't know, um, those kinds of things. But reducing those errors at the beginning is really a big key for this.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess reducing the errors, because you're getting the breadth of viewpoints at the very start, and you're getting people to check your own thinking at the door, essentially. And then, like you're saying, and I think we will talk about this when we're talking about the what. It's everybody knows this, that teamwork can be, if you don't set up the team well, if you don't set up the ways of working, if you don't facilitate the expectations, you can lose people, and then you can have people going in sort of, very different directions, or people not cooperating or collaborating on a project. So you're stepping up to lead something, but you can't get people to come around it. And it's really being able to, reduce those errors where you then have your team going in different directions, or you have some people not even showing up. No, that's good. And it's almost sort of getting into the last point in terms of shared ownership to get the job done. How does that look like? Why, how does strategic facilitation drive that from your perspective?
Um, uh, I guess uh, um, we'll get to this, I know, in a future slide, but the idea of being clear, the idea of being clear and transparent is side by side with being strategic. Um, and so helping people understand not only what you're asking of them, but why you're asking of them to be engaged in a facilitated conversation rather than in a being told what to do type setting, can really set the tone for them to feel, to that last point, to feel ownership over what it is they're actually doing. So I think about times with working with an advisory group of clients that I worked with, where we had to continually remind them that not only what we're trying to do is, this was about improving health access in a rural part of the United States, and that what we're really trying to do is that they know the answers better than some experts who aren't from the community. The people in the community, in this case, know the answer about how to make health access easier. But we have to, the strategic part is getting them to believe that they are really part of the answer, not just the doers. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about for that.
That's good. That's good. And let's take it a bit further. And if you're with us, please do put questions, put thoughts, and just engage in the chat box. If you've got a thought to share as well, just raise your hand. And I'm sure you're with us. Please put an emoji or something if you're with us, if you're following. And I just want to be sure we haven't lost you. So we can get you a part of this conversation. Please put an emoji, a thumbs up, or some sort of, okay, Grace, I see. Grace, yeah, okay, I see Ban
Fancy.
as well. Yeah, brilliant stuff. Thanks. Let's get into feel free to share thoughts in the chat box. I see the what. So let's talk about the what. And I think we were talking about this earlier, and there's two sort of big pieces to strategic facilitation. And what is this idea of, longer term sustained impact? Um, Facilitation for longer term and sustained impact. What does it look like in your perspective?
Yeah, I think the difference between facilitation and strategic facilitation has to do with the kind of outcome that you're seeking for a meeting or a gathering, or even pulling a team together. If you're just trying to do one specific thing, whether that's a single program or even your training example, how to use how to use a specific software tool better, that might not require a strategic approach. That might just be all tactical. How are we going to do A, B, and C? But that is a short-term outcome. What do we need now? Or one type program. Thinking about a strategic role where you have a much deeper level of engagement for everyone who's part of this team. They're asked not just to be the title of their job, but to really feel like a contributor and creator of something. That's to get on this long-term path of how this person is going to help you be successful in your organization. And of course, it'll look different for all of us, but that's the strategic part is getting each individual person to feel like their contributions are even more than what they're giving. Sometimes in the US, we talk about the sum being greater than the parts. That's what strategic facilitation. And so related to that, about what is it for teams, is strategic facilitation is about something deeply relational, where
Just before,
you're,
sorry,
yeah,
Dan,
sure.
before
We
you
can
go
pause there.
to relational, there's something I wanted to say about longer term sustained impact, because I think to what you're saying, and just to buttress that point, you're thinking about what does this impact, what are the decisions we're making right now have longer term within the organization? If I'm championing a meeting, how does it connect beyond now? How does the learning? So if I bring this into the context of learning, I think about transfer of learning, retention of learning.
Right.
You're getting people in a learning session, and how do you really drive longer term learning that goes into the context of application? So you're thinking very strategically about it. You're not thinking of, because I think if in fact, if you look at the way sometimes learning is measured, and when you look at the evaluation methods, you look at Kirkpatrick model and then you see people, good question, Grace, come to it shortly. And then you see people look at, just deliver learning or deliver a training and session. And, the metrics we used to judge that are, was it exciting? Did people pass the test at the end? And all that. And those are very surface level things. But then when we talk about the strategic component of it, is thinking about the longer term, thinking about the connectedness to their roles and what people have to do and what people have to implement on the job. And so when you're facilitating that, you are building in sort of those other future pieces so that your present work can have impact on the value that people deliver, on the work. And there's a good question from Grace here. We can take it before we go to relational orientation. And Grace is asking, what type of strategic facilitation is applicable for a team that works with processes spelled out in law, and therefore very little creativity is involved?
That's a great question because it talks about that's separating the what people are doing from the why. So in my thinking on that, my first thought on that one is that's almost all going to be relational. How you keep people excited, motivated, engaged, feeling like they're part of a team, feeling like they're part of something bigger. So the process, the important part of the strategic part would be to think beyond, is to already assume that folks are doing their job because the processes are clear. You're not, this isn't a performance review or performance part. This is how do we work together better as a team, and how do we spend more time with each other, engaged with people that we like and want to be around. To me, that is like very, very soft skills type thinking, but I look forward to talking more about that one. I don't know, Demi, if you have any thoughts on that.
I like the soft skills thinking side of it. And I think it's the how versus the what again, because if you think about the outcomes of any facilitation process, while there are very clear, processes that you need to go through, the way in which one team would execute it will be very different in which another team will execute it. And you can see the difference. And Grace, this is the point. You can see the team that, even given the same types of processes, the how with which they drive towards the outcome will be different from an entirely different team, where that facilitation piece is now embedded into the process. So you can have very technical subject matter, but the how in which the process is delivered can allow for people to engage, think about different ways to recombine those processes, but or even imagine the way, just saying this in a very fun way. It's interesting. I stumbled on an Instagram channel. It's a couple, it's a lawyer couple. They're based out in the US somewhere, and they call themselves Mr. and Mrs. Law or something. They do they support people who've got accidents, injury at work, and all that stuff. and they take a very creative approach to how they deliver their, their services or how they engage with people. And it's their process. You might go into another law firm where it's a very strict sort of, this is the process, this is how we go. But these guys bring just what we are saying, this relational element into it. They bring lots of fun into the journey. They make it easier for people to engage. So creativity is to the extent to which we allow ourselves. I don't think that there are parameters to hinder creativity that are set in law. Obviously, even lawyers interpret, things creatively and all that. But I'm saying in terms of how the process, that creativity is our prerogative to say, even with a very rigid sort of process, the way in which we deliver this, navigate it, and please feel free to share more context. If you're talking about how the team works, because the facilitation can be, be with the content, if this is a learning space, or it could be like a collaboration for a team. But then again, hopefully this helps you see that is the process versus even that specific outcome, and we can creatively do that. Grace, does this make sense? Or do you feel like there's a follow-up thing you wanted to ask? Hi, Grace, can you hear me? Grace, is this helpful to you, or you feel like there's a follow-up? Okay,
We'll get her.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay, thanks, Grace.
Okay, thanks, Grace. So Dan, just talking about that, I think it leads us nicely to like relational orientation and sort of what we were talking about, the systems approach. Well, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think by relational approach, and we'll share this more in Nairobi, that at least in the US and the organizations that I'm working with, even with the development of all of our tools and AI tools, the buzzword still on everyone's mind is talent, and how do we develop talent, motivate talent, keep people excited and engaged at work, and make them see their own leadership path. All of that goes to people feeling like they're valued, they're contributing, they're part of something bigger than themselves. All of that goes to, are they in a relationship of some kind with the other people in their organization that they work with? And to be clear, it doesn't mean being best friends with the colleagues and the boss is now your friend and stuff like that, but it means you have a meaningful and trusting connection with them. And so strategic facilitation can be not just driving business outcomes, but driving longer term relational outcomes that ultimately will support those business outcomes, because you'll have lower turnover, you'll have more engaged employees, people excited to come to work for you. But regular facilitation, again, can be helpful if there's super specific task oriented or transaction oriented that we need to do. But being strategic about it is, what do we really want from these people over a long periods of time? And that connects with all of your systems, whatever the systems you're working in your organization can be. So we need people to use those systems both internally and externally, and being thoughtful about how you run your meetings and gatherings and workshops so that people feel like they're part of those systems. That can really make a difference. You're on mute, Demi.
Sorry, I'm back just now. Yeah, so that's a very good one in terms of just helping people see, their peace and motivating people. And obviously, I think even whether you are the boss in an organization or you're just a facilitative leader stepping up, because you see, I think that facilitation can be used by anyone to influence at all levels. So if you are maybe a report or your mid-level, and you've got layers of leadership above you, one of your tools will be a really facilitative approach, because you're not telling people what to do. Obviously, there's that resistance if you sound like you're telling people, even when you've got good ideas, you've got to be able to lead people towards that without necessarily telling them. And I think it's powerful to put in that relational piece. And I want people to be able to see that regardless of where I sit in an organization, or regardless of what level of clientele I engage with. I mean, I've been on both sides of the table. I've sat in organizations, but I engage with clientele as well. And it's really that piece of now tapping into, that relational and engaging people to be able to influence at different levels and bring the contributions together. I think the other thing that's interesting from a strategic facilitation point of view, especially for the systems, is that when you're facilitating strategically, you're thinking about, like you said earlier, Dan, the whole is the sum of its parts. So if you are doing anything within an organization, for example, you're thinking about how does this affect marketing? So you're doing something in HR or you're doing something in tech. You're thinking about sales. How does this affect sales? How does this affect marketing? How does it affect? Because believe you me, if something is going to fly within an organization, it's going to have the least friction. So if you, for example, are working on a project where there's going to be multiple stakeholders, or at some point there might be stakeholders that need to be consulted. Obviously, you do like your RACI matrix, and then you look at all the different stakeholders. And so when you're coming to that facilitation, you're taking a systems approach to it to say, are there points where we're going to need buy-in from all the stakeholders, or we're going to need, some sort of approval or some sort of cooperation from other stakeholders? And it's really about grounding that work within the context of that system so that the impact can both be systemic, but also so that you encounter less pushback when other parts of the system are trying to, adopt your idea or support your idea or support your project or help you to go through with it. Because you could get great outcomes at the end of a meeting, but if they don't work for people, or if they raise a number of other challenges across different organizations, then guess what? Sorry, across different teams, then guess what? It will be dead in the water. So for example, I was working on a knowledge-based project. So knowledge-based in terms of helping to do a knowledge management sort of thing for the business. So across the entire organization, we're pulling in knowledge so that the knowledge of the organization is preserved and people can find what they need in order to be able to do their work easily. Now, facilitating that entire process needed me to be able to think systemically. So think about who will be impacted, who needs to be consulted, who would champion this, who would support this, and being able to engage people at these different levels across the system brings a greater chance at success. But if I went into it with just the focus on outcomes and the results that I'm trying to get, then I create more bottlenecks, or I encounter bottlenecks that I didn't need to encounter. And so I think that's the value of now taking a systems approach to when you're facilitating towards an outcome. And obviously the question is, we've talked about the why, so getting the best thinking out of people, challenging your own bias, reducing errors, getting to results faster, driving shared ownership to get the job done. We've talked about the what. We're talking about the longevity of the impact and the value, the sustained impact. And then we've talked about the fact that strategic orientation is grounded in relational approaches, but is also grounded in systemic considerations, so systems thinking approaches as well. So let's talk about a bit of your thoughts, Dan, on how do you then do this?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that these slides are clear. We have some people in the waiting room, Demi.
Yeah, I just
Okay, good. Excuse me, sorry, it's so fun. I feel like the ones about the how are it's intuitive, and then they're not. And so the first, it might make sense about setting and being clear about outcomes that build on each other. But I think all of us know so many meetings we look and are clear. We don't connect, and I'm guilty of this too. We don't make as clear connections between our outcomes in a row that we really should. That we know people in our team want. We know people maybe we report to or our clients need, and we still don't do that. And that's kind of related to the second one about, I think, I hope that we can give you some permission to go slower sometimes. That strategic facilitation is on again, long-term relational piece. It's okay to go slow and not rush into a long to-do list of stuff, to try to just knock off your list. I mean, this is taking one or two things and really diving deep and thinking with intention about them. The third point about clarity and purpose, again, is kind of related to those first two, but just a reminder: the clearer we are with why we're doing what we're doing, it makes it so that people see their entry point into your vision. People on your team, a way to connect with their motivation and values, to show them the way into your world, and then or into your head as a leader, and then how they can make it better. People want to make it better, but they don't see what you see. The last one is just a technique, a specific technique that I've tried in certain meetings that I've had, is instead of asking people what their next step is, ask them to think about what their next two steps are. So that they're thinking not just, what do I do out of this meeting afterwards? What do I do? And then what do I do? And that levels you up, that cascading part, into something bigger. So that's how I'm thinking about that.
Yeah, I like, what do I do next? What are the next two things? Because I think when I think about cascading, I think about outcomes at different levels, right? So even when
Right.
you think about learning, you think about learning at different levels. You think
Right.
about like the very immediate outcomes of recall. You think about that comprehension. You think about application. So it's important
Right.
to be able to cascade for people the
Right.
milestones. So if you're facilitating a project, if you're facilitating a program, or if you're facilitating, teams across a series of meetings, there should be outcomes that are cascaded. Some outcomes, to your point, we don't have to get everything done right now. Some
Right.
outcomes make sense to accomplish right now. Some will build on the next in our separate. And so as a facilitator going into that, you're mapping the journey, you're mapping the process. And so you've got the freedom to be able to then cascade the outcomes for people, so that you're taking people from one step to the next. Because what you
Right.
don't want people to do is to feel daunted and to push back. Because what
Right.
are people going to do? If they feel daunted, if they feel like this is too much, or they feel like it's impossible, then you're going to encounter pushbacks that you might have. But then you can cascade the outcomes, manage expectations for your stakeholders, whether it's a meeting or a project that has got senior executives and all levels of executives, or it's something that is a session, a learning session, where you've got multiple learning sessions, or you've got, an entire program. So it's really about cascading the outcomes. Yeah, and I think if I will add anything as well, I think it also is a deep understanding of the context, the journey and the systems. So the context in which you're doing that work, the journey, the systems that exist there, and the journey people need to go through.
Right.
Facilitation, you can be more aware. Strategic facilitation asks you to be more aware beyond just thinking about pure outcomes, but you're more aware of the complexities that are within that, and you can manage it. Let's take this question from Grace as well.
Yeah,
Can
it's a good question.
can strategic
I,
facilitation really work for micromanagers? It seems like it is set to work against micromanagers. It's a good question. What do you think?
my first reaction is, can this work for micromanagers? I think the answer is no. It seems like it's set to work against micromanagers. I think you're right. But it doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's impossible. I think, though, the first part might be some kind of more trust building foundational work to help people even get to be ready for a strategic facilitation conversation. Because if the people are micromanaging because there's a lack of trust in the organization, my experience has been to try to work on the trust part first. But I don't know, Demi, what your thoughts on that are.
Absolutely. We were saying earlier on that, I just said now the strategic facilitation calls you to be more self-aware. And, we were talking about something around, when we started talking about visualization, we talked about helping people challenge their vulnerabilities. Micromanagers sometimes are very insecure about, like you're saying, trust, like trusting other people to do their jobs. So it's not necessarily the people. In many cases, it's the lack of trust in the organization, but it can also be on the part of the manager. And it's really getting people to be self-aware and to sort of question their own biases, their own assumptions. You've got to, in order to use facilitation, you've got to lose the micromanagement.
Right.
Yeah, you've got to question it, and then you've got to lose it in order to be able to allow space. Because the whole essence of facilitation is that you're allowing people to bring their best selves. And if you're micromanaging them, guess what? You're only getting what you think you're squeezing out of them for
Right.
the most part. You're not really stimulating or empowering that entire creative extent of them. Yeah, that's what I think. Grace, does this answer your question? Yeah, and
Hello,
yeah,
can you hear me?
yes, I can hear
Yeah.
you loud and clear.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, brilliant. If there are other questions, put them in the chat. But one of the exciting things, I think Dan and I have done a good job just covering ground in terms of why strategic facilitation, what strategic facilitation and the how. The good news is that if you want to review this, we're going to make the recording available to you, especially for people who just joined, so you can catch up on the conversation and look at how it applies in your context. If you've got questions, feel free to share. But one of the things I want to drop with you just before we go, like I said, is we've got some exciting, news, and we've got a Global Facilitator Impact Summit that's coming up. What Dan and I just talked about is the very, very tip of the iceberg. We're going to have a physical experience where we would dive into really how do you facilitate, how do you improve yourself and grow as a facilitator, but importantly, how do you create business value through learning and performance facilitation. And we look at digital strategies around that. We'll look at how to evidence value for your stakeholders, for your teams, for your sponsors or whoever else is involved. So we've got HR perspective, we've got L&D perspective, we've got all business functions perspective, and really looking at this from a holistic perspective to say, how does facilitation, the different types of facilitation, help you to drive measurable value for a team? So on the 11th of November, we're going to spend some time together, about 5 hours. It's going to be a deep dive. So, and what we hope you do when you come, and what we're sure you will definitely get when you come, is that you will feel empowered to drive change and to create value, regardless of where you sit within your organization or regardless of the types of clients that you work with. Like, you will get the tools to drive negotiation, to drive your pitching, to drive your communication, and to really get clients or stakeholders or colleagues towards the outcomes that they need. Obviously, when you get people to the outcomes, then they are able to reward you, pay you, and do all that. And so it's really about getting better tools, becoming better empowered to be a leader and a value creator that shifts possibilities in terms of learning and performance for business outcomes. And this is for project managers, this is for L&D people, this is for HR, this is for entrepreneurs, this is for business people, and it's really understanding how to use facilitation skills to drive towards business value. Now, there's a number of freebies you're going to get as a part of this. You will get our 7 practices of highly impactful facilitators book, which is a very amazing resource. You will participate, meet and network with other amazing facilitators on the call. You will get 6 months free access to our value platform. We would also give you the Global Facilitator Impact Summit of 2024, amazing event. You will get the replace to that. And then, of course, you get a participation certificate. So this one, we've put a lot of value into it. It's going to be a day that you will be glad that you set aside to really interact, network, build your skills. And so we look forward to seeing you. Dan and I are, like I said, are sat in different countries right now, but by God's grace, we will be there in less than 2 weeks, engaging with you in person with all our amazing speakers, Sira Rama, Dorcas Njuguna, and then, of course, Maureen Mungara. It's going to be an amazing day. Now, the catch is this. Early bird, it's 2,500 Kenyan shillings only, which is a huge sort of drop in terms of the amount of value that this is. So this is a great opportunity for you. We've reduced those stakes as much as possible. But then you've got to, if you want to get at 2,500, you have to register before November 7, because after November 7, it goes to 3,000 Kenyan shillings. So we will obviously send this to your email. You can click the link that is in the chat box now and just go secure your slot and come and interact and engage with us in person at the Global Facilitator Impact Summit. There will be lots of people there. So if you're a business person looking for new clients, looking for new networks, looking for new connections, this is also a reason. If you want to exhibit what you are doing, or you can chat with us as well, and then it can be a platform where you even get even more value for yourself, find new opportunities, find new business, and grow as a person and as a facilitator. So looking forward to seeing you at that it's going to be at the Fungamano Hall from 9 a.m. up to 3 p.m. On Tuesday, 11th of November. Okay. So this is the link, tinyurl.com/GFIS 2025. Please keep that down. Click it now in the chat, go to it and reserve your ticket. You will get it in the email with the recording as well. And we hope to see you there. And please do share with colleagues. If you've gained value from today's session, invite colleagues to come as well. Invite colleagues in Nairobi, invite colleagues in Mombasa, Eldoret, Nakuru, wherever people are, and let them be a part of this amazing one-day powerful summit. Okay. Yeah, Dan, any closing thoughts from you as we round this up?
No, just I continue to be inspired by what we do as people together. We're getting more and more machines that are able to just do task-oriented stuff. The question about micromanager, a machine can be a micromanager. We don't need a person for micromanaging.
Right.
What we need people for is to get the very best out of each other and see how working together can make short and long-term difference. So that's what's exciting to me.
I love it. That's so good. Like, we don't need machines to micromanage. Sorry, we don't need people to micromanage. Machines can do that job,
Yeah.
can clock your hours, can measure your input and your output, and can, all that's good. That's good stuff. And what we need people now to do, and this is the age of facilitators, I'll be honest with you, facilitation is going to be a high premium, high value skill, because
Absolutely.
people that know how to get the best out of people and machines are going to be the ones who sort of lead in this future that is, rapidly becoming more technological. Yeah.
So I hope to meet you all in person in Nairobi in a couple of weeks.
Brilliant
2
stuff.
weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks. Thank you, Dan. Everyone, I want to say thank you for joining us. We will send all the replays, forward it to your friends and colleagues, let them get value out of this as well. Register for the Global Facilitator Impact Summit, and then see you in Nairobi. Do have a good evening. Thank
Good.
you for your time.
Thank you all.
All right. See you later.
So Demi, we can touch base in the next